Hey everyone. No, we aren't.
Yeah, let's.
Or should we do it?
Yeah.
Hey everyone, this is Daniel.
And I'm Jun.
And we are
Korean.
American. Alright, well, we are back. And yeah, we will continue with our podcast final summary. This is part 2.
Part 2.
Okay, June. One thing I did want to do tonight in this summary wrap-up episode, in my mind, we would be able to basically consolidate and condense, again, 125 plus episodes of, that's one stat we didn't pull. Like, how many hours of recording do we have content? Anyway, we would be able to pull the key themes and, I guess, core pillars of Korean culture that we talk about and kind of use as the root causes for a lot of our explanations. And as clearly and crisply as possible to define and lay those out. I think it would be, to me, a good way to kind of wrap up all of the discussions and conversations that we've had. So yeah, ideally it would be, right, like we could take this, and not that we're going to, but publish some Korean American podcast book of definitions and keys to Korean culture. So that was my goal. I think we both wish we had a lot more time to spend on this and prepare it. Because as we were, spending a little bit of time before recording this, doing it, at least I realized, like, oh man, these are too complicated. I haven't structured or formulated all of my thoughts on this yet. But at the same time, the show must go on, and I think we should still do our best to do this. And I think it could be a good, thing where it's like, oh, if you're interested in Korean culture, listen to this, 15-minute segment from that podcast. And if that's interesting to you, there is like a whole wealth more of content that you can listen to. So it could be like almost an encapsulation of our entire podcast in that. So I don't know. Do you want to try it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Let me pull up my very rudimentary notes. I don't know. Which one do you want to start with?
Whichever is on the top of the list.
Let's start with Jeong.
Okay.
What is the Korean American podcast definition of Jeong?
Something that one believes in and the other doesn't.
Oh, touche. That's a good one. I see what you're doing here. Yeah. So since I believe in it, maybe I'll go. No, just kidding. But I thought we got to a really good place with this.
Yeah.
And actually, the Jeong episode was just the start. I think it really didn't land for me until one of the episodes in our 90s.
Yeah, the social circles.
Yes. Which, that was one of the big like breakthrough moments for me, where the relationship between Jeong and why it results in like the social circles in Korea being very small, like, really 2-3 people, maybe up to 5, right? But that group is super tight. And then everyone else is a stranger. Yeah. Like you only have these, we'd call them Jeong-based relationships. And if it's not a Jeong-based relationship, that relationship basically is going nowhere. And you'll tend to basically ghost or end that relationship. But yeah, to do that, I think we should at least try to define Jeong and what it means to Korea. So,
I mean, to start, the reason why I said that I don't believe in it is because I don't. No, I'm just kidding. I do believe that there is a sense of friendliness, right? Okay. That can go very deep in Korea. The part that I don't agree is that it is viewed as something very uniquely Korean.
I see.
I feel like the deep type of kindness, humanity, and friendship exists across all cultures with a little bit of twist in their cultural idiosyncrasies, if you will.
But those things you just said, I don't think are Korean Jeong. Like humanity and kindness.
Humanity isn't Korean Jeong.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, if anything, I think that's American Jeong. Which
there are different colors of this concept, right?
Yeah.
And I think Korea just branded it well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw this out then. Again, we define the Jeong-based relationship as one where the relationship is moving towards removing all boundaries and
Yeah.
a sense of oneness.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a gravitational force
Yeah.
where if this keeps on going, it's just going to be like, I mean, theoretically, right? Hypothetically becoming actually a singularity.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. But you don't want the whole country to do that, right? It's just that group of people. It's a black hole.
Yeah, I did actually make a black hole analogy, I think.
Yeah.
Not the whole country, but like it's like clustering here and there, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why the cluster doesn't become bigger.
Mm,
It almost sounds like a physics thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, let me take some stabs at it. I think we settled on a few things, and I want to see how they resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is the removal of boundaries towards oneness in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is Korean Jeong.
Mm.
I think a follow-on from that is the unconditional sacrifice. Sorry. An extension of that is, I think you could say Jeong is unconditional sacrifice or putting the other before yourself.
Mm.
And another thing that comes along with this, I think, is a relationship with no accounting.
Mm.
And I think because there's no accounting, therefore you can put in sacrifice and put in the other person before yourself because you don't expect anything back.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it wouldn't work out, right? Because, then there would be an accounting there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think these three together kind of, I don't know what's the root cause, but I think together they define a type of relationship that, at least from my perspective, does not exist as much in America.
Why doesn't it?
Like when I think of my friendships, even the friends that I think are like, I consider my closest and best friends, I don't think we're moving towards this state, or the intention or goal is to get to this place where we have no boundaries. We consider ourselves just one unit, right? To me, again, I've said this before, boundaries are healthy. There should be some healthy boundaries, and that's what makes the relationship, I think, really work for both parties. And as soon as you get beyond that, again, it can be toxic, or it can be kind of, it's so hard for it to be even. Does that make sense?
Even?
That's interesting. I brought up an accounting term. I think because unless there's some sort of clear boundary, I think it's too easy for that relationship, one party in the relationship to maybe take advantage of the other, or they're going to get more from it, right? It's almost impossible to reach this perfect state of harmony where both parties are entirely selfless, right? And so for me, I think it's a defining factor of like really healthy relationships is that there is some sort of clear boundary.
But don't you yearn for, if, right? Hypothetically, there is that relationship that is in total harmony. Don't you want to have that? The reason that I'm asking is I want to distinguish between whether you
Hypothetically would want it versus is it practical to achieve it?
Yeah.
Interesting. I just think it's so impossible to achieve. Let me actually gather my thoughts. Do I want that relationship? I don't know. Yeah, it feels very uncomfortable for me to be put into that relationship. I think it's too ripe for, again, being taken advantage of.
But see, again, hypothetically, if you know that it's not going to happen.
I guess I just don't imagine a type of relationship like that can exist. Even between husband and wife, even between, in a Christian context too, like, creator and creation, right? It's just so hard for me to imagine that type of relationship existing that I quite honestly don't know how to answer it.
But isn't that like fundamentally a Christian ideology too? Like that unconditional.
Yeah, but I think it's seen as, it's one way, right? Like God is unconditionally loving towards us.
And you can never do that.
We try to attain that, of course, but we know we can't. And I think the danger is if we ever think we can, then it's not going to work out, right? Because you're overconfident, right? Pride comes before the fall type thing. But it is funny that you bring this up, by the way, Jun. Like sometimes in church, when I'm thinking about, all loving God, Jeong is the word that comes to mind. It's like, oh, this is like that perfect love that you are always trying to get, but it's only possible because God is perfect type thing. And I think when I try to apply that to a human context, which I know none of us can achieve it, that's where it's like, oh, it's just so dangerous.
We're almost going into a territory of like Christianity and like Platonic theory.
Oh yeah, I don't know
like
what that
the
is,
idea.
but yeah.
Yeah, because like in Plato's theory, right? There's like this thing called the idea where you can never achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did we get there? Have we become a philosophy pod? But that is really when I hear you describe Jeong, that's kind of what I think. It is unattainable.
Wait.
And therefore, if you try to, it's gonna be dangerous.
So my next question is, do you think you're representing Americans here?
Oh, interesting.
Or do you think it's like your personal character?
This is obviously deeply personal, right? To me and my background and my beliefs.
Because to me, like, again, I don't know very well about American culture.
Yeah.
But as it is true with many Koreans, the way that we consume American culture is through Friends. And if you see Friends,
yeah.
I might have mentioned this in some episode, but anyways, that type of relationship is, I think, a very good example of a Jeong-based relationship. Yeah.
See, when I see the 6 friends in Friends, I do see best friends. They're such a big group.
Yeah. Like that sense of exclusively 6 of them, right? And not
That's true.
Yeah.
There's some weird loyalty there.
Yeah.
And they'll never welcome an outs.
Yeah.
No, but that's not true. Like once they get married, I think they're now in that group by nature of being married into it.
But it's almost like a plug-in.
I see. Yeah, it's not the original.
Yeah.
I guess in my mind, and maybe you can clarify this
Romanticization.
Jun, maybe you can clarify this romanticization I have of Korean Jeong relationships. But those feel way more like all-consuming and sacrificial and like self-denial.
Okay,
and like the friendship.
I'm so fascinated.
Yeah.
Why do you romanticize that? Is it because you want that?
I don't know. Okay, wow, that's a great question. If I had to be honest...
Is this a therapy session?
No, the first thing that comes to mind is that's kind of the sacrificial, I think, love in a sense that I felt from my parents. It's like constantly denying themselves anything good or luxurious or nice in life. And everything is just prioritizing what's good for the kids, better future, better life. And it's very one-sided, right? I can never repay that. And I think that thinking about that kind of deeply sacrificial love is the first thing that comes to mind. And again, I don't know if that's unique to Korean culture, but that kind of sacrificial nature of parents seems way more pronounced, at least in a Korean cultural context to me, versus an American. Yeah. Like I could never do that for my kids. My parents could do that for me. And I think a big part of that is because like I grew up in America.
But why do you romanticize it?
Yeah, because that to me is... I mean, that is why I romanticize it, I think. It's because that's the type of love I feel like I received from my parents. And I think maybe in that regard, it's like my model of what a Korean sacrificial love can look like overall.
But you also said that it's practically impossible to reach that.
Yeah, I would never consider my parents and me in a Jeong relationship, right? Because I don't give anything back, right? And I think if I...
Because the very fact that you don't give anything back is the definition of a Jeong-based relationship.
Oh, wow. Because I can receive without any expectation?
Yeah.
But it's one way, right? I don't know.
I don't think it's one way.
Interesting.
I think your existence is the other way.
As
We're getting too deep in this.
We are. Nope. As a parent, this is very interesting, right? I don't expect anything back from my kids.
Yeah.
What I will say, though, Jun, I think I do stand by this. Earlier, I had mentioned in a previous episode, I don't think Jeong relationships can exist when there's a hierarchy involved. I actually think it can only exist amongst peers or where there's no power differential at all. Again, maybe this gets back to the early thing, like there's too much risk of someone taking advantage of the relationship. And so anytime there's a power differential, I'm not sure I can ever believe in like that Jeong relationship.
I think a
And
parent to child relationship is hierarchical.
I do think it's hierarchical. That's why I don't think it can exist. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like, I think my parents do give me unconditional love, but we are not in a Jeong relationship together. It's like very one way.
Wow.
And one thing I wanted to extend this to June is like, because Korean culture is so hierarchical, that's what I always felt like made that very tight Jeong-based friend group so powerful. It's like one of the few, if only, areas in life where there's no hierarchy. And we're all equal, and we can all give and take perfectly equally with each other. And again, because there's no hierarchy, there's no risk of like someone taking advantage of the other. It's just all very freely given and freely taken.
But can't you imagine a Jeong-based relationship between like a neighbor harmony and you? And I know that you don't feel hierarchy
Yeah.
with the age difference, but
Yeah.
in Korea usually there is, right? But I definitely do feel that there could be a Jeong-based relationship there.
I think you're using Jeong to describe giving without any expectation in return. That for sure, I think the harmony can give to the kid, but that to me is one directional. That's not a Jeong relationship.
No, not the kid, but maybe like me, like 40-year-old me
Yeah.
versus a neighborhood harmony. We can have a Jeong-based relationship.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't, but
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
yeah.
Is there a hierarchy there between you two?
If age is a hierarchy, yes.
Yeah.
But I can still have it. Or like my teacher, I can have it with my teacher.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not in my definition of.
Interesting.
I don't know. Maybe it's so weird because I keep talking
See,
about.
it's such a vague term.
We keep
that it's
talking about
not-
this relationship with no accounting,
Yeah.
and then I'm the one constantly injecting accounting into it.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it's like in a teacher-student relationship. What's the student giving, like bringing to the relationship? They're just taking. They're not really giving.
What about like your old teacher? You can still have a Jeong-based relationship with your old teacher.
I think once that hierarchy is removed, it probably feels much more healthier in my mind. Yeah.
It's not, but there still is a hierarchy if you're your old teacher.
You're always older, and they're always the teacher.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't think we're making much progress.
No, I think this was very interesting.
I know, but my goal was to have that clean, crisp definition. And
You can never have it because it's never the concept itself is never a very clean cut one.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was already set up to fail.
I think by nature it is like that. Because I think you want to encompass a broader phenomena as much as possible. And so you can't like really make a clear boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get to this later. I'm afraid I'm going to forget. But again, some of the biggest breakthroughs for me was, again, that episode you brought up, which is why do Koreans only keep a very small, tight group of friends and no one else? But a very quick corollary, like a very similar extension of this was, I think, remember there was the English teacher Oliver Sem, right? And he was describing that situation that Koreans feel in America, where Americans put up this boundary, right? And I think understanding Jeong and the expectation in Korean people's minds that this relationship, you know, in its purest form, ultimate goal might be to reach this state where there's no boundaries, we're one. And being able to demystify why, from an American perspective, boundaries are healthy and it's nothing about you. It's just me setting a boundary, and that's what I need for this relationship to last and be healthy. I think that was also a very proud moment for me. And, you know, one of those like, oh, I really feel like I can help Koreans understand why Americans might behave a certain way, which to a Korean might feel very cold. But that's not the intention at all from an American. It's just like, I don't know. I'm running right now. You know, I'm not going to stop and talk to you in the middle of my run. Or like, hey, we just met, but I'm going to go above and beyond to try to help you in this situation, even though I have no reason to, and I'm not going to ever get this back, but I'm just still going to go beyond my, out of my way to help you. And yeah, anyway, to wrap up my thoughts, that's what I think American Jeong is to me. I would just define it simply as the kindness of strangers. And so I think it's very similar to Korean Jeong in the way that there's no expectation of getting anything in return. Also, there's no accounting, right? Because again, I'm just doing it. I'm never going to see you again, but I'm going to be very kind to you. But there's no feeling at all of like we're moving towards oneness, right? I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it. And maybe in that way, I would call it something you said earlier, just humanity. That's how I think of American Jeong. Yeah. I'm all over the place, I know. But
Can I try to poke holes there?
Please, yeah.
I might be totally misunderstanding this, but one of my theories would be because America is so, number one, individualistic, and also I think it's very egocentric. And I think Americans feel that type of like warm-heartedness when they do it, and it's not necessarily for the other person,
It's
but
for
deep
themselves.
down it's like you want to feel that way.
I could agree with that.
Yeah.
But it's still, in a sense, it doesn't make... I see what you're saying. I still think at the end of the day, you are, in a sense, it's like, in the first degree level, you're giving something to that person that they can never repay you. But I agree, the secondary order is like, oh, I get this feeling of like, I'm being good and doing something good.
The reason why I can't really register this is because for me, Jeong is in its nature a relational thing. It's something between you and me as a relationship. Whereas you and a stranger isn't really a relationship. And therefore, I was thinking maybe it's a very individualistic act.
I would counter that
Yeah.
by saying that you feeling like there's no relationship to a stranger is a very Korean Jeong mindset.
I'm from a collectivist society, man.
Let's explain that, because to me, strangers, I have a relationship with every single person, right? And because we're in the same society together...
Because your definition of relationship is very shallow.
Wait,
no, I'm just kidding.
No, but collectivist, you brought up collectivist.
Yeah.
Is that only in a group combine, or is it like society writ large?
Society's at large too.
Yeah, so then you have to admit a stranger living in society is still... there's a relationship with them.
Interesting. Maybe you're right, yeah.
Yeah. But no, Jun, this ties, we're going to talk about this later. But do you see how interesting this is? Like, in your Korean mind, your relationship to a stranger is through the societal barrier, connector. And this is how, we invest in the collective infrastructure, safety, whatever.
Yeah, it's within
and that's
the
how
system.
we relate with that person.
Yeah.
But an American person just goes straight and helps them directly, right? I think it's so interesting.
It's almost like the crypto theory.
Oh, yeah, decentralized.
Yeah.
Okay, we gotta bring this back. No. Where did we leave off that was helpful? Because you were trying to poke holes at my kindness of strangers.
No, I think that's very interesting.
No,
I think that's ultimately the collectivist mindset, the centralization of relationship.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So you actually want to continue down that instead of...
No, I just thought that was interesting.
I know. Should we do that on air for the recording?
I thought everything was on air.
Oh, I don't think... I keep turning off my recording voice.
Recording voice?
It's not my voice, it's more my,
I know.
I just talk fast sometimes just to get it out. Jun, I don't know if I ever mentioned this. What you just said triggered something for me. I still remember the exact moment where someone blew my mind, but I want to get into this with you. I'll come back to the point, I promise. He told me, he was like, hey, Daniel, there's no such thing as sacrifice. Because that person who was quote unquote sacrificing is just, let's say they, instead of buying themselves something, they buy something for their kids. All it means is that to them, the feeling of doing something for their kids was more valuable than that thing they were originally going to do for themselves. So in a sense, it's not sacrifice at all. It's all self-serving. It made me think a long time, but then with the help of AI and stuff, I think very clearly though there is a direct first degree sacrifice, right? Money that I could have spent on me, I am now spending on my kid instead. I am now spending on my kid instead. I am sacrificing that for my kid. Of course, I am doing that because I really want to prioritize them, but that's still a sacrifice. And so to counter your point, I think even if I'm doing something that will make me feel good, right? And that may be one reason I'm doing it. At the end of the day, I am, like, say, exchanging my resources and sacrificing them for the good of someone else, what I'm defining as the kindness of strangers. And I think that in and of itself is a virtue. And again, that's what I'm referring to as American Jeong. Whether we feel good about it or not, to me, it doesn't matter that much. At the end of the day, we're trying to help people who can do nothing for us.
No, I'm not saying that that is invaluable.
Yeah.
I was just trying to find the root cause of why that's happening in an individualistic society.
Okay, I think this is going to get into individualistic versus collectivist. In an individualistic society, we cannot rely on as much of, let's say, the safety net of the country, whether it's infrastructure or the government, and therefore, like, individuals take it upon themselves to kind of create that social infrastructure themselves, right? And so in a sense, you could say, like, let's use, there's a very good example I think we brought up before in the podcast. Someone, you see someone on the side of the road with a flat tire, right? And, American impulse might be, I'm going to pull over and help them fix their flat tire. But I think one of our conclusions was a Korean would never do that because Koreans know that it's so easy to call someone and that person's going to help you, come and help, it's their job to help you with your tire. And, you'll pay them and it'll be equal. And, like, there's no give or take. It's just all equal, right? And our interpretation was like, well, in America, that tow company is not that accessible. We don't really trust that it's going to come. Maybe they're going to try to scam you and charge you a huge amount. And also, if I'm in a situation in the future where I'm on the side of the road, I want someone to pull over and help me too. So therefore, I'm going to, pull over and help this person fix their tire. And I think it comes from that level where in a collectivist society, my feeling is that the individuals mostly invest in the collective infrastructure and support. And that is how they might help that person indirectly through that other collectivist body. Whereas because Americans don't have that collectivist body that they trust, they just directly help each other one-to-one. I don't know if that follows, but
isn't it kind of like the chicken or the egg thing? Because you can also argue that if the social infrastructure is so weak, why didn't you become a collectivist society? Oh, and make that very robust infrastructure amongst yourselves.
Maybe you're right. I think the core difference might be society. Back to your point, Jun. It's like we want to feel good, right? And doing that directly for another person makes me feel better than if I invest in some centralized government or authority that then helps them. But I don't get to see that directly, right? It's not me doing it, first order. And so maybe it is ultimately for some individualistic, selfish reason. Whereas I think Korea, a relational society, always considers themselves and their identity from the perspective of someone else, right? And so it's always thinking, okay, what can we do to invest in what's right for the collective whole? And I will reap some part of that, but the first order business is it's good for everyone. So this is not going the way I expected because we're jumping all over the place and it's not as clean as I thought.
I think that's the conclusion, though.
We're reaching so many good conclusions, I think.
Yeah.
But we're tying together in such a haphazard manner.
No, I think the conclusion is it is very difficult thing to define. Yeah.
Everything's interconnected.
Yeah.
Right. It's so hard. This individualistic versus collectivist. Yeah. Jeong We haven't even got the Han, Nunchi.
Let's go.
Okay.
Power through.
I'm unsatisfied, but we have to move on. Okay, after Jeong, we should talk about Han. So I think we can just repeat your definition from before, which let me see if I can do it from memory. An unresolved clot of negative emotion.
Yes.
Right? That was your definition of Han. Do you stand by it?
Yes, I do.
I know you put a lot of thought into that episode.
It was mostly for my own good, right? Because I really wanted to understand this, because I know that doesn't really exist anymore, or like at least dwindled compared to before. But I do know that the sensation does exist, so I really wanted to understand it, to not only explain it to you, but for me to understand it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The definition I came up with was, I think, pretty similar. A deep lingering feeling of grief and resentment that arises from enduring an injustice you were helpless to change. And maybe it's a bit redundant, right? If you were helpless to change, that's what injustice is. But I feel like all these parts are very important. Like, I think lingering is the same as your unresolved, like it's still there. But I really feel the core of it is like this resentment that is building up. And I think it had to have come from some injustice in the past. I think that's why it had to have come up. But yeah. Yeah, this one I feel pretty good about. I still remember the episode, June. And I remember... Actually, I was going to share this later, but I've been doing like a re-listen. I didn't make it all the way, but I at least made it to the Han episode. And I feel like after listening to that, I was like, yeah, I think this is pretty good. Like, I don't think there's much I've learned more deeply about it since that recording. And so I think overall I feel pretty good about where we are with this one.
To add a little bit of like new thoughts that I have about Han, is that I really don't want it to be a defining identity of Koreanness, because I don't think there's anything good about it.
Interesting.
What is good about having Han?
It can serve as a motivating force for you to...
That is very unhealthy then.
I could see it being unhealthy, but
Yeah.
it also can be very productive, at least in the short term, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like having something unresolved, right?
Yeah.
I know that it could be inevitable,
Yeah.
and it could be a phenomena, but I just wish that it's not a defining characteristic of what Koreanness is.
Okay, June, let me I've never said this before to you. I think Koreans need to learn how to mourn and grieve.
Yeah.
And I think the only way that you can resolve this feeling is to go through the process of mourning and grieving.
Yeah.
But I think that is the defining characteristic of Han, that they're not resolving it, right? So it's a bit circular. But I think to move on, I think they need to learn how to, actually vocalize, verbalize, feel and experience that negative emotion, and then incorporate that into their life moving forward in a healthier way.
Yeah.
But I think collectively, I'm not sure Koreans know how to grieve and mourn. And it's something personally, I've said this before, right? I'm going through this process myself. There are a lot of... I actually think that's a defining trait of the midlife crisis. There are things about your life that you have to mourn and grieve that maybe never will come to pass. But holding on to them is just going to hold you back. And so you have to learn to process and let go of these things. And it's very hard. Trust me, it has been so hard for me to get through these things. But I can honestly say after years of this, I am in a much better place overall with myself, with my relationships, with my marriage and family. And I think, I just imagine like if I hadn't tried to go through this process very purposefully over the last 2-3 years, I would still be in this place of like just holding on and like deeply bitter and resentful. But I feel like I'm finally starting to let that go. Yeah.
Do you think that is somewhat related to you being Korean? Or do you think other American people have that too?
I do think it's universal.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say is, in general, the only model we have in life mostly is from our parents, right? And I never saw my parents ever process their negative emotion in what I would say a healthy way. And definitely I've shared this before, they've never shared the collective trauma they experienced, really much of it, to me and my brothers and sisters around their childhood and Korea's painful past and history. So I think if there was some way to just open up the doors of sharing and grief, and yeah, it might not, you could say it doesn't serve a purpose. Well, why are you complaining? We all went through it. But I can honestly say it does serve a purpose, because by saying it, at least processing it, acknowledging it, right? And that's one of the things I said in my definition. Like it goes unacknowledged, just resulting in this resentment that builds up. That's the only way you can kind of slowly, hopefully resolve it over time. But what do you think about that? Do you think Koreans know how to grieve and mourn things that they lost? It can be anything, right? It can be a relationship. It can be a dream that you had that no longer is going to come to pass. It can be not getting the Sunyung score you wanted, or getting the job, or making the money you had wanted to earn. Or I don't know. Do you think Koreans know how to grieve it?
I think definitely the past generation didn't know how to do it. And I think there was the societal pressure to just like hold it in, suck it up, and then just move on. And I think it's because of practical reasons, right? Because Korea was in a situation where you didn't have that kind of luxury to like sit there and mourn, right? You just had to like go to work again, right? And be productive, right? And so I think it's very different for the younger generation, the current generation. And I think that type of like healthy outlet is what K-pop is, K-drama is, all the K-culture is, right?
Yeah. Some sort of fantasy, some sort of escape.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to help process it and resolve it, right? It's more of a distraction and escape mechanism,
but I mean, for K-dramas maybe it is, but K-pop, right? It's all about the expression.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
One example I had, again, it's probably like my American trying to put everything into a box, but like when I hear about things like the Npo, right, generation, just giving up and pogiing, that to me is like, instead of processing and grieving these things, they just kind of give up instead. And that's the thing I see as a pattern in Korean society and culture. And I just really hope that the society can get to a place where you can openly talk about these things that you're really unhappy about or disappointed in yourself or your family or society. And it's not a negative thing that you have to be shameful about, but you can actually just discuss and process openly. I think collectively, Korea can move towards a healthier place with these negative emotions. But as you said, Han seems to be going away, or is far less, I guess, front and center for the current generation. So I think this has already happened. But maybe for the health of the previous generation, that needs to happen. Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, let's move on. Nunchi.
Nunchi.
This is one for me that probably changed the most from before. But yeah, how would you define Nunchi?
Nunchi? I think it's slightly a different concept from the recipient versus who's giving it to you, right? So I guess Nunchi could both be just a concept, but also a verb.
A verb, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Because Nunchi could be described both in a positive way and a negative way. If you have the Nunchi, it means that you are like not violating the social conduct.
Yeah.
And therefore it's a good thing.
I think that's the standard definition I had. Again, emotional intelligence or ability to read the room, social awareness. I think that's how it was always described to me. And then we had talked about it on the podcast, and you were like, no, a lot of times it's a negative thing.
Yeah. Because 눈치 본다 is a lot of the time a negative thing. Like you're too cautious about reading the room, therefore you're timid.
Yeah.
And you're not proactive enough. Yeah.
I defined it as a constant awareness of the unspoken social norms and expectations that your actions are judged against.
Oh,
and
that's
so
pretty good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You did your job well, my Korean culture tutor. But I also think it's, the key parts here are that it's constantly there. Like there's always this expectation that you know what to do and what not to do, what to say, what not to say, right? It's unspoken, so they will never flat out say like, oh, you know, you shouldn't do that to me. It's like they'll just like give you a glare or like everyone will be quiet, right? And then it's like the judgment part is also very important. Like if you don't adhere to it, you will be judged negatively. So,
And what does that make? An unresolved clot of negative emotions.
oh, you think Nunchi could be upstream of Han?
Like a micro version of that.
Yeah, I think very little.
Yeah.
Good question though, Jun. Why is there so much Nunchi in Korean society?
Because I think...
Or do you think it's not any more prevalent here than America?
I think because Korea is a very high context society, right? Because again, it goes back to... After all these years, I'm still having a hard time pronouncing this word. Homogeneity. I don't know what's up with this word. And therefore, and because of the singularity of the culture, right? Everything is pretty much shared.
Yeah.
Without saying, right? And therefore, there are a lot of things that you just presume that the other person knows, and therefore you have some kind of expectation to know that and abide to that. I think that's why there's so much nunchi. Yeah. In a high context society, I think there's always a lot of nunchi. And I heard that Japan has like next level nunchi.
Specifically high context meaning there's a lot of unspoken understanding.
Yeah.
It's not so explicit in the communication style. How about this? I think it's Nunchi to me is highly tied to the Confucian principle of harmony and basically being non-confrontational. And so that's part of why it's unspoken. And again, I think you get the most Nunchi when you say something that might disrupt the harmony. Like you might make someone feel shame or bring up a topic that is sensitive, or you cross that boundary into making things awkward. Does that resonate with you? Basically, nunchi is coming from disrupt. The most nunchi is given to actions that disrupt the harmony of the situation.
To me, I think there's both concepts of harmony and then efficiency related to this.
Oh, I've never heard efficiency.
Because in a high context society, in a good way, it is very efficient. Because a lot of information is conveyed without actually saying it.
Yeah. There's an understanding underlying everything.
Yeah, and if someone doesn't understand that, you have to explain that. It disrupts the flow of efficiency.
And everyone's annoyed.
Yeah.
Like, why are we explaining this for you, one person,
Yeah.
even though everyone else understands it? Okay. Or at least we'll pretend to understand it.
Yeah.
For the sake of not disrupting the harmony.
Maybe.
So the classic example, again, we brought up that I think is perfect is in a college classroom situation, a professor might end the lesson saying, oh, does anyone have any questions? And I think, Jun, you said Koreans will never raise their hand, even if they don't understand it, because they're like, well, what if everyone else understands it? Like, I don't want to disrupt them for me. Whereas, an American individual mind's like, hey, I have a question, regardless of whether they think everyone else in the room might know it already, right?
So going back to that example, right?
Yeah.
If you want to achieve optimal level of efficiency, I think logically no one should question anything.
Efficiency defined as
I think
everyone in the room learning the concept.
No, I think logically only the smart people should be allowed to ask questions.
Okay.
I think the inefficiency happens when dumb people ask dumb questions and waste everyone's time.
And then everyone's looking at them, which is like, we're ready to leave, but now you're answering this question, asking this dumb question.
Yeah. Don't you agree though?
I can't say I do.
Oh. Do you think the dumb questions are valuable?
Well, to that individual, and the professor did make space to ask it, right? He could have easily said, like, email me or come to me after class. And then also, as a student, it's my right to leave before that dumb question gets answered. So...
But what if there's something else that you have to wait until everything ends?
So this is where I would agree.
Yeah.
Maybe the protocol would be everyone silently votes on which questions. They write it in. and then the professor aggregates and ranks from top to bottom.
Well,
What everyone wants to know.
That's pretty efficient.
What I would say though, again, just to reemphasize, my understanding of Nunchi coming in to Korea 5 years ago was completely off. I just didn't know because again standard Korean American, Webster's definition was always like social awareness, emotional intelligence. Again, that's what I thought Nunchi was, but it's actually this this very different thing. Oh, but Jun, I think is that the first time you've injunged one of my definitions?
I love that
Ooh.
definition. It was very
Thank you.
clean and precise.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wait, I a lot of the times
No, I know.
I injong your definition.
You're very supportive. You're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's actually quite good.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, collectivist society versus individualistic society. I think I wanted to compare and contrast these two because this comes up a lot. One thing I had was you asked this question, which I think reframed this a lot for me, which was every time a Korean sees an action or thinks of an action, they always think, would this work if everyone did that? And for me, that question doesn't come up very often. Like it's not something front of mind for me. It's just like, well, that's just a hypothetical. Not everyone is doing it. And if it came to the point where everyone was doing that, then we'd figure it out. But for me in this one situation, if I use the life vest that's reserved for the lifeguard, even though there's no lifeguard present, I should be able to use that. There's nothing wrong with that. That combined with another thing you said, Jun, which has stuck with me, which was, aren't individualistic societies still collectivists in the sense that they agreed upon some set of rules that they need to abide by, so that does not make them collectivist. The more I thought about that, I actually feel like they both are achieving the exact same outcomes, but just in a very different manner. And so I think at this point, the way I think about the difference is that in a collectivist society, the individual exists to reinforce the greater good of society at large, and then they benefit because they are part of that, right? And so the default is like, you as an individual have no rights, and we will slowly give you rights such that they don't take away from others' rights, right? In an individualistic society, I think I would say society exists to protect your individual rights and freedoms. And so the default is you have every right, and then society will take your rights away when those rights interfere with other rights, right? So in a sense, I think they can ultimately converge to a similar outcome. It just goes from different defaults. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know if this might not be directly related to that, but when you said that Korean people always ask, what if everyone does this? I think it's because most of the time it happens.
They actually will all do it.
And it's because everyone thinks the same. And it's because it's
interesting.
collective and homogeneous society.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is interesting.
And I don't think this works in an individualistic or diverse society like the US
Because not everyone is going to do it.
Yeah, and the probability of that happening is very low.
Yeah.
And so I think society is designed to accommodate both phenomena.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think therefore,
Yeah.
this I never thought about. I think that's why Korean rules are so, what do you say? Like following by...
Yeah. The letter of the law. So
letter of
black
the
and
law.
white. Yeah.
And it's
no
because...
wiggle room.
And because in this collectivist homogeneous society, there's a risk of everyone acting the same way.
I think that stems from the competitiveness, though.
Well,
it's
that
like,
too.
Koreans, I think, will do something if they see their neighbor doing it. They don't even think about, oh, do I need this? Does it benefit me? They're like, well, they're doing it. I don't want them to get something. I'm going to do it too.
Yeah, because we're interconnected.
You said something before, I think, right? Korean society is collectively individualistic.
No, individualistically
collective. Yeah. And American society is collectively individualistic. So yeah, I think that's a good summary. So I do think the two concepts are very tightly connected and can converge in a sense. It's weird for me to say that though, because I just see society so different. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I can't reconcile. Like, logically, when we talk about it, like, oh yeah, they're gonna converge and achieve the same outcome. But when you actually look at how it plays out in society, they're so different. Anyway, I do think, just to further your point, June, this is one of the core reasons why I believe Americans tend to follow the spirit of the law rather than the letter. It's like, oh, like, I get what the law's trying to do, and I'll apply it and adhere to it in my own way. Whereas Koreans are like, well, we don't individually have our own interpretation of the law. We're just going to follow exactly what it says by the book, and therefore the laws have to be very meticulous and meticulously enforced too. But I think that veers into fairness, which I think we can knock out very quickly. June, do you still agree that in Korea, something being equitable is actually seen as unfair, whereas equal is fair? And so, again, just to quickly summarize, equity would be if you have people at different heights and you have a fence of a certain size. Equal would be everyone getting a ladder of the same size. But in that case, still many people cannot see over the fence. But an equitable solution would be to give each individual a ladder that is high enough to let them see over the fence. So, yeah, do you think this is true?
I think Koreans for a very long time were in a very similar situation, ethnically, economically, culturally, and therefore the concept of fairness was being the same.
Yes, you're right. Equality and equity were exactly the same. Oh, this is such a good point. Let's keep going. Yeah.
And so I think the mindset is wired that way.
Yeah.
That equalness is equity. And we've very recently come to a point where, at least economically, there's been this stratification, right? And I think Koreans are just not used to applying that equity concept.
Yeah. I think this resonates very deeply with me. Yeah. So again, Korea still by and large is very homogeneous ethnically, like DNA wise, right?
Yeah.
But as far as economically, right, 1950s was a hard reset. Everyone got put to zero. And so we all, all of Korea started from the same finish line. All of Korea started from the same start line not that long ago. And by and large, we're in a similar economic state. But now obviously that's changed a ton. And so it's not equal economically. And so I think Korea as a society has had to grapple with that. Yeah. I actually think this is a big part of a lot of... Actually, this to me is why maybe Jeong went away and why Han is still there. It's like, well, the resentment is over. Like, why don't I have the money my neighbor does? We all worked just as hard. We started from the same point.
Yeah.
Right? And this is why Jeong is gone, which is like, oh, we're not in it together. Like, clearly, we're not giving and taking equally. Some are taking more than others, right? And so why should I give selflessly and without expecting anything in return?
And it's happening just right now with
it happens so fast. Yeah.
With like the bonus of the Hynix.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, SK Hynix
Samsung
and
people,
semiconductor industry.
And Samsung people striking.
Real estate. Yeah. It happens, if you just get lucky, all of a sudden you're very rich, right? Nothing other than luck in a sense. So, yeah, I think that is where Korea really struggles, is the economic inequity. Okay, June, let's keep going. I think we're making progress. There's one thing I've been meaning to talk about on this pod, but I don't think we ever got a chance to. So you said there's this term for like whatever the mainstream, mainline way of thinking for Koreans is. It's like Guk-rule. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you say it properly?
Guk-rule.
That's so hard for me to say. Guk-rule. Guk-rule. Okay. Guk-rule. Does that sound racist?
Why?
Because Guk is a racist phrase.
No one, I don't think any Korean knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Guk-rule, my understanding, let me try to define it. And I know this comes from the homogeneity and collectivist thinking, but I defined it as it's a collectivist mentality such that what an individual wants is simply what is popular in the larger society. And so because of this, it leads to singular thinking. There's only one right way to do things or one goal to obtain. It also is I think, the root cause of the trend culture, such that like something getting to trend velocity is hard. Once it goes there, like it reaches this tipping point, and then everyone has to copy it and do it because of the Guk-rule mentality. So I think in general, I often saw this as like, oh God, it's so dumb. They just copy each other. No one has an individualistic perspective or a desire. Even when it comes to traveling overseas and vacation planning, they all just want to follow the most efficient, trip that everyone else is doing, take photos at the same locations, right? And so I remember thinking when I first heard this term, I was like, God, that's so dumb, right? Just do what you want to do. Why do you have to look at others and follow what everyone else is doing? But I'm very surprised to say, Jun, I deeply, deeply love the Guk-rule mentality.
Oh, what changed you to think that way?
It's so comforting
It is,
to
right?
not even think about making decisions. It's like, oh, you're going to Taiwan? Let me look up what Koreans recommend doing. I'll just follow that itinerary. It's so simple. I don't think. I have no risk of, missing out or falling behind or anything, right? When it comes to food, when it comes to how I dress, what car to buy, what, just everything. What companies I should work for, what I should aspire to earn or whatever it might be. It's just like, oh, just everyone's doing it. I'll just follow that. There's a sense of comfort in that. And yeah, it's so counterintuitive for me to say this, but it really feels liberating. Like I am liberated from having to make any decision over my life. Isn't that crazy that I'm saying this? But it's so freeing. I just kind of like, I feel like now in Korea for the past few years, I've just been like a leaf floating in a stream, going down the river, living my life. But I have very little control over it in a sense. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like everyone else is in this river floating along with me. Like we're all leaves in this river, floating towards some goal, right? We're not trying to define our own life or make our own way or change our environment. We're just kind of floating along. And, because we're all in it together, there's kind of a peace like that. I don't have to make decisions.
I want to put a different light in this concept of Guk-rule.
Yeah.
I think for an American view, it's very easy to think that people are just blatantly following that.
Yeah.
I think most of the time it's the other way around. Let's say, even in an American culture, let's say there are people who grew up in the same household, in the same neighborhood, eating the same food, under the same parents, right?
Okay.
They're likely to like the same music. They're more likely to like the same type of whatever food, right?
Yeah.
And let's expand that out to society.
Yeah.
Right? Even if I try really hard to find something that I really love, it ends up being what everyone else is loving. And that becomes the Guk-rule.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so it's not that people are just blatantly following what others are doing. And I do think that some people do that, but I think the very core of how a Guk-rule is determined is because it ended up being a lot of people just liking that.
Liking it?
Yeah.
But then that has an effect of like a gravitational pull, such that everyone else, maybe who was on the fence or wasn't quite in that boat, they tend to gravitate towards it more, right? Because society just forms around that expectation now.
And I think society is just designed in a way that is most optimal in the context, right?
For the overall efficiency.
Efficiency, yes. And so I think if you're in a homogeneous society with like single ethnically singular, why wouldn't you do that?
Interesting.
And I think it's a very uniquely American thing to think that everyone just should like something else
Individually?
Yeah.
I wonder if they are ethnically homogenous states, like let's just say the Nordics, that still operate a little bit more individualistically, and there's not as much like, Guk-rule culture.
See, it's exactly that. Didn't you say the last time you visited Sweden, everyone was dressed the same? That is their Guk-rule.
Okay, there was like that uniform.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the difference, Jun. I would estimate that Guk-rule outfits like 10%. Whereas in Korea, Guk-rule reaches like 60%.
Oh, that's too much of an exaggeration.
You don't think so?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, let's take this example. College admissions. In Korea, you take your sunyum. How much preference is put into that versus there is a list 1 to 100 of the rankings and you just go into the one that the highest one you got accepted into. You know, or when it comes to anything, I think Koreans love these rankings, right? We've agreed on that. So it's like, well, if I'm going to eat food, let me look at the restaurants I can go to near me and rank them 1 to 10. I'll go to the one that has the highest ranking or most popular.
See,
Or-
again, why are Korean people so obsessed about ranking? It's because it's very hard to distinguish one to the other than a numeric leveling system.
I would say it's because it's easy for them to just look at that ranking and like pick the highest ranked one they can go to rather than having to sit and think and make an individual choice. Like, what do I want to eat today? Where should I eat today? What college should I go to? Where should I live? Who should I marry? It's just you follow the Guk-rule. Well, the rule tells you this is what you do. When you travel, well, this is what the Guk-rule tells you should visit. Like, I think there's a comfort and a lack of individual taste making that provides security.
If I reverse engineer
Yeah.
how I think of things when I follow the Guk-rule,
Yeah.
is because it logically it is the highest probability of something that I would like to.
Oh, because I'm like everyone else?
Yeah.
It's such a inverted way of getting to a preference, though. This is exactly what I said. It's like what an individual wants is simply what's popular in society, right? I guess you're approaching it from because all individuals are similar, they just all individually like the same thing. I don't know if that's true, though. Right? With dress, with like what you wear, the trends that come and go. I see this being the Guk-rule phenomena, right?
Yeah, but at that moment of time, right?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that, okay, let's say in terms of fashion,
Yeah.
there's number one, something that could look good on you, and you look pretty similar to all the others, right?
But do you think that's where the root cause comes from?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I mean, I think it goes both ways. It's not just one way or the other, but
Yeah.
I'm just trying to approach it from the bottoms up way of how this is generated.
Yeah.
And then at that time of era,
Yeah.
there's something that is truly kind of like seems like in fashion,
Yeah.
right? So there's one intersection. And then there's the social appropriateness
Yeah.
that everyone understands in a
Yeah,
high
yeah.
context society. And so there's another intersection.
It's safe.
There's so much that you can pursue
Yeah.
in this society, I think. And that's the Guk-rule.
I think it stems from a feeling of the competitiveness combined with risk aversiveness. And what I mean by that is if I follow the Guk-rule and fail, or I don't have a good time or whatever it might be, at least I fail along with everyone else, right? So when
Because that is the fairness.
I think it's like I don't want to
equally failed.
Well, I don't want to fall behind my peer or look worse than my peer or whatever, right? So if we all dress the same, at least we all look good or bad together, and I can't fall behind someone else. It's just such a safe thing to do, and I think a part of me really deeply appreciates that. Yeah, coming from the U.S. where it's like everything, you're always making so many decisions all the time. What do you want? What do you want to be? Where do you want to live? What do you want to do for work? What do you want to eat every meal, right? And it's just like information overload. There's like a cognitive overhead to making all these decisions. And in Korea, I just follow the trends. I just do what people do.
But that
It's
is so
freeing.
That is so you.
I was always meant to live in a collectivist society, June. This
I think-
American individualism's been forced on me.
So I think
Uh,
the reason why I'm trying to interpret Guk-rule in this different lens is because I think I'm somewhat of a more individualistic person in the collectivist
I
society.
completely agree.
And when I choose something that is Guk-rule, that is the mindset that I'm going for.
I see.
Yeah. And a lot of times I realize that something that I individualistically just liked
Yeah.
ended up being what everyone else liked too.
But do you ever think subconsciously maybe you individually like that just because everyone else is liking it and that's what you see?
That is absolutely no.
Okay.
Because I'm a type of person who actually dislikes something if I find that everyone else is liking.
I see. I understand.
Yeah.
The funny thing is I'm similar, right? Like I'm countercultural.
Yeah.
I'm a hater. If everyone else is doing it, I don't want to do it. But again, for whatever reason, I find it deeply comforting. So I just found that very surprising. All right, Jun, just a couple more. Because we talked about efficiency earlier, I never realized how much of a trade-off until you highlighted this for me. Customization trades off with efficiency.
Yeah.
It's just like if everyone is ordering the same thing with no customization, it is hyper efficient. Everyone gets the exact same, right? No, oh, can I make that spicier? No, oh, hold the gosu. Like, of course, gosu, I'm bringing that up because in Korea, that's the one thing people hold. But it's just like, everyone gets the same thing. You can batch make it. It's hyper efficient and it's super fair.
Yeah.
No one's getting more or less, right? Whereas, at first it was such a turnoff for me. It's like, oh, can you make that less spicy? Oh, can you take out the whatever it might be? I was so used to this customization, and I realized it is individualistic, right? Can you cater your menu to me, right? But also it is very, very inefficient, which I found that the few places in Korea that does offer customization, I find myself waiting a bit impatiently. Just like, oh, it's just taking so long to make my tacos or make my sandwich. So
there's this very symbolic scene in Korea where people go into a Chinese restaurant, and in Korean Chinese restaurant there's this ultimate choice that you have to make, whether it's jjajangmyeon or jjampong, right? And it's always there's this gravitational force where everyone has to 통일해. Like,
what's 통일해?
Make the same choice.
Oh, as soon as one person says one thing, everyone follows?
Not in a sequential way like that, but like everyone just tries to like make it into just one.
Really?
Yeah, and then 짜장면 5개요. And there's such a satisfaction.
Well, I do that too.
Yeah.
It's like someone else can decide for me, and then I'll just plus one it, right? For me, it's actually removing the cognitive overhead again of making a decision. That's why I do it.
I think more than that, it's for the efficiency.
Oh, wow.
It'll come out faster.
No, are Koreans thinking that? At least you think that?
I think Koreans think that way.
Wow, I would never think that. For me, it's more just.
And then there comes this concept of Nunchi here.
Oh.
There's this 눈치 없는 사람 saying 짬뽕.
And they're like, Ash.
Yeah.
Like, why is the one person ordering? Oh, so interesting. Very funny. Okay. Jun, I think there was one more root cause of Korean culture or pillar of Korean culture that we haven't touched on. And I want to at least say, I know this is getting long, but I just find it as the abundance mentality in America versus a scarcity mentality in Korea. Or at least, you brought up the scarcity thing. And I think it comes from a variety of factors. Korea is functionally an island. There's not many resources. There's not many ways in or out. And so it's kind of a zero-sum country where everyone's fighting over the same things. I do think it comes because of the competition and the collectivist mindset where everyone's going after the same things, which makes it even more competitive. And it's like this perpetuating cycle. But I just wanted to bring this up. What do you think?
100% agree.
Yeah. Okay.
But I also want to bring up that America is one of the very few countries that
agreed.
Has the luxury to have that kind of abundance mindset.
Is it the only?
Almost, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's so abundant in resources and land. It's protected on both sides militarily. It's not at risk of war in the homeland in a sense. It does feel like if you win in America, you can win globally, right? So I do think there's this general optimism and abundance mindset that Americans have. I wanted to extend it a bit to, you mentioned this term earlier that I'll never forget, mainland or big continent thinking. Do you remember when I was describing that?
Yeah.
And, I think China has it. I think US has it. I think India has a little bit of it. I think the UK has it.
The UK?
previously, I think, during their colonial time.
I
I think at some point, if you were the biggest, baddest nation or power, you had the most power in your little region, you probably carry that.
Yeah.
Like maybe Germans carry it, but then they got,
yeah.
brought down after World War II. I think you might have said before Japan might have had it, but after, World War II, they got shut down too. But yeah, I just feel like there's this optimism and swagger and, way that Americans and these peoples carry themselves that, Koreans tend to be more on the, like, we have to fight over the limited resources that we have. And the one question I really wanted you to answer is, like, do you think this still needs to be there today? Or is it just something that's ingrained and, like, is Korea really a scarce country? Like, do they really need to be fighting over every last resources against each other?
I think there's a difference between economic success and global power. I mean, it's somewhat related, right?
I think they're highly correlated, but yeah.
For instance, Singapore is very economically successful, but nevertheless not a big global power. And I think because of that, I think Korea can never have that swagger.
Wait, why not?
Because at one point you have to conquer the world.
Yeah.
With the power and the resources and the money.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't think Korea can ever be that.
That would be interesting if, like, does Singapore have a abundance mindset or more of a scarcity mindset?
I don't think they'll have an abundance mindset.
I think Singapore is a great comp for Korea, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the war history. Actually, I don't know enough to know what their history is or not. But, they're an island, a smaller population, but, overall high GDP and overall good, national average. But they're not going to expand or grow, right? So,
yeah, and they don't even have their own water resource, so they have to get it from, I don't know, Malaysia or something.
Singapore imports their water?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
See, they can never have the abundance mindset.
That's true. Wait. Okay, wait. Korea also imports a lot of its resources, including oil.
Yeah.
I wonder if the Gulf countries, because they have so much oil, if they have an abundance mind. I think they do have an abundance mindset.
But they don't have the power.
They don't have the power as of now.
They have the money, but they don't have the power.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So you need money and power. Or do you think you really just need power? Is there a country that's powerful but not rich? Russia?
Yeah.
I think they have an abundance mindset. No, maybe not. I don't know.
They don't.
Because they lost they lost the Cold War. It's just America and China right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? I think this is also true. If you are in an extreme weather condition, you can't have an abundance mindset.
So
if you're living in Russia, right?
Yeah.
How can you feel abundance when you're so restricted by Mother Nature?
You also have to live free from natural disasters and also in a nice climate.
See, America is just, you're just lucky to have it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, but yeah, I think this drives a lot of the things that we've talked about, Korean culture. I do think it makes the competitive nature even more extreme because everyone's fighting in a zero-sum game rather than maybe trying to grow the pie. So, okay, June, this was super long. I think past Jeong, I feel pretty good about the rest. But yeah, Jeong, I think, is the one that I don't feel great that we got to this consensus or conclusion on. But very clearly to me, there are differences in how Koreans and Americans view relationships. And at the core, it comes down to whether boundaries are healthy or not. I think that is true. Yeah. Okay, even though we, have no plans to continue this podcast after this, I would still like to at least say, in a typical summary, we'd always be looking ahead to. So maybe we could just talk about, June, were there any episode formats or topics or dreams or hopes that you had for the podcast that we never got to achieve? That, if we were to ever pick this up in the future or it were to live on in some other way, like what are your hopes that, for the future of this podcast? That might be the wrong way to put it, but, what are things that you would have liked to achieve that we weren't able to?
So, you know, where when we really had the momentum of growing followership and listenership and all that,
Yeah.
I think that itself was really exciting for me. But what was really exciting was that we got to have connections to more influential people at some point. And what I regret was that we didn't leverage that.
Take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Right? We could have had the opportunity to talk to, I mean, who knows if they're really interesting or not.
Yeah.
But like very like famous or influential people. And I wish we could have had the opportunity to either have them as guests or we go on their channel.
Yeah.
I think that would have been very interesting. Topic wise, I know this is silly,
Yeah.
but it feels like an unfinished quest for me.
Well, I know what you're gonna say.
Because we didn't do K-pop.
K-pop, yeah. I knew it.
And it's weird that I'm saying this because
Yeah.
I'm not really a enthusiastic K-pop follower.
Yeah.
But I just feel like this is something that was just so big
Yeah. How could we
about
never
Korean culture
have a K-pop
but
episode?
we just didn't do it.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. Just to respond, yeah, I mean, Jun, I think actually throughout the entire course of this podcast, that was probably the core tension I think we faced, which was, you know, I think I was very explicitly, I didn't want to have famous people on the podcast. Of course, one of our guests was pretty famous, but, you know, obviously, like, we could have tried to close or reach out to or see very famous people come on the podcast. But for me, I feel like that would have put into tension the reason why I'm doing the podcast, even though it didn't need to. Like, I fully admit it. We can do both, right? Because the more people we reach, the further that is furthering our mission too, right? So I don't think there is a contradiction, but for me, it feels like there's always is this tension. Are we doing it just to get bigger, just to get a bigger audience, just for ourselves? Or are we doing it to kind of stick to the core principles that we had? A part of me also, if I had to be honest, I didn't want to get bigger because there's more at stake to lose in a sense. Like there's more to gain, but also my risk aversiveness maybe. No, it wasn't that. Really, I think the goalpost would have had to shift. And this would have had to go from something that was just a creative outlet, just a hobby, to something bigger and a lot more. And I wasn't sure. Quite frankly, I don't think I'm the right person for that. And personally, that's not something that motivated me. So again, I've told you this before many times, but I do feel bad in that sense. I think in another world with a different host or set of circumstances, you know, who knows how big this could have gotten. But yeah. What was the second one you mentioned?
K-pop.
Oh, K-pop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we've said this before, but we were always waiting for a really good, you know, guest or two to come on for this topic. Because I think one thing we said before was if there was ever a topic we felt like we couldn't do justice towards, we would invite guests on to do that. But then as you started working more, you know, scheduling got more difficult, etc. I think it just, you know, we just ran out of time.
What was like an ideal guest for you?
True K-pop fans. Especially maybe a female perspective too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Jun, for me, there are a handful of episodes that I always really, really wanted to talk about. I think top of mind is Korean Adoptees. It's such a big part of the, you know, diaspora, the community of Korean, ethnic Koreans living outside of Korea. It's such a huge part. You know, I've met so many adoptees over the years. You know, I even met in person an adoptee listener that emailed us. You know, the timing didn't work out, so we couldn't do an episode there. I thought that would have been wonderful. There was one adoptee actually living in Korea doing art, which is another topic, by the way, I really wish we could have covered, like art and how that differs between the cultures and countries. But yeah, the adoptee one is one I really wish we could have talked about because it's such a unspoken, like they live in such an, you know, a very difficult situation, right? They're fully ethnically Korean, yet they grew up outside of America, not even in a Korean cultural context, right? So yeah, they have, I think, such a unique perspective on Korean culture, American culture, and the intersection of them. And plus, I just think their stories are generally underheard heard and known, especially by the Korean people that would be listening to our podcast. So I think that's number one for me. Number two, there was we had a guest lined up again, and we just couldn't schedule it, but the topic was basically morning culture and why Korea doesn't have a morning culture.
Morning as in 아침.
아침, yeah, or AM culture.
Yeah.
And it's a common complaint for foreigners too. Where can you eat breakfast? There's nothing open before 10, right? Even cafes don't open early, right? Which is to an American crazy, right? The goal is to eat breakfast, get coffee before you go to work. But in general, there's no morning culture. Oh, morning, it could be crying. Yeah, got it. So morning AM culture. And I thought that would have been a really great guest. And I think, having talked to them, they had so many good thoughts about Korea, why it doesn't have this, and what they're trying to do to change it. And, they're being super successful in their endeavors. And I really wish we could have had them on. But again, we had it lined up. We just didn't have time to do it. The other one that comes to mind is...
Wait, you didn't mention the person.
Yeah, I know them as Sean, but I don't know what they're...
SMCC?
Yeah, SMCC, Seoul Morning Coffee Club.
Yeah.
And again, I'm so happy to see that they're exploding in popularity and succeeding, because I really wish there was more of a morning AM culture in Korea. The other...
Because there's a very strong PM culture.
It's true. Is that your explanation, like your one-liner? Because the PM culture, everything extends so late, mornings start later.
Yeah.
Interesting. The other topic I really wish we could have touched on was reunification. Because I think this is one where Gyopos and Koreans feel very differently overall. I think I fantasize about and romanticize this reunification. And I think modern Koreans are like, why would we? Like, there's so much, like, we're going to give more than we get back. Like, we're struggling on our own. Why would we care? So I don't want to put it that harshly, but I think in general, there's a big divide in how Korean Americans think about this versus Koreans. So I thought that would have been interesting. Yeah, but these are the ones that come to mind. Oh, okay. Jun, I think we're running out of steam here, but let's end strong. Any other final thoughts before we end this final summary?
I think the biggest meaning for me for this podcast, other than the fact that I'm doing a podcast.
I thought that was so honest and funny, by the way.
Yeah.
You're like, I like being a person who does a podcast.
Yeah. Is the fact that not only I got to explain what Korean culture is to non-Koreans, but I think in that process I got to understand American culture and also understand my culture better as well in a more structured and rigorous way. And I think that really helps me generally in life how to understand others. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I don't know, for me, definitely this podcast made my time in Korea more richer. And I think I shared this in a previous episode, right? Like, even when I travel, even knowing that there's no podcast to record in the future, I still find myself wanting to take notes and just make observations for myself and really for future me to think through these things. And just, when you note them down, I think it then incorporates into how you think about things, right? So just really broadening my perspective. Of course, I feel like I've learned so much about Korean culture that I would not have had we not done this podcast. So I'm deeply grateful for that. And thankful again for all our listeners, for my wife's support over the years, all the recording time and editing time at home and things like that. So yeah, it goes without saying, of course, Jun, deeply thankful for you and your commitment to this and just your ability to explain things so clearly, I think is very unique. So I don't know if we should include this, but I had this vision of like, or hope that I could listen to every episode before recording this. I tried to. There's so much content. I lost steam around episode 50, but I did listen to like the first 50 over the past month.
It's very impressive.
I didn't take too many notes. I will say, oh man, the first few episodes were very hard to listen to. The sound quality was so poor. It was so kind of, in my opinion, awkward. Jun, I mentioned this to you before. I talked over you a lot, which I still probably do, but I was so unaware of it until I listened to the recording and edited it. I feel like there's been at least 3 or 4 phases of our podcast. And in particular, I will say like episode like 29 through 40, this is when we started to tackle the topics of Jeong and things like that. Just like, they were bangers. I thought they were all awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, we like really hit our stride there. But then after that, we got into this lull and there was like a lot of media reviews and kind of I felt like it was lacking enough structure. And then we got into our study routine and I feel like those episodes were okay again. But also we started off really, I think I was so focused on having some balance between the Korean and American side of the conversation. But again, around that time, it just shifted entirely into Korean. So it went from kind of trying to mutually understand each other's cultures to like me just trying to understand Korean culture. But I think that's natural. You know, we're living in Korea and I'm the one with all the questions. And I feel like you know, if we were living in America, it might be inverted. But yeah, that was very obvious in listening. And then, yeah, I had forgotten so many things, June. Like we used to try to end every episode with like a tie-in back to the topic, right? So cheesy and corny, but also kind of heartwarming. Like it was, you know, endearing. But yeah, I'm not surprised we ended it. It just got too hard, and yeah.
And I love our titles.
Oh, we had some really good titles back when we were trying to be super clever and unique with each one.
Do you have any favorite titles?
No, I have to go back and look.
I'm looking at all the titles right now.
Yeah.
Can I just highlight some of them?
Yeah. Really good? What are some of your favorite episode titles?
I love the first one after the pilot, Too Sweet or Not Too Sweet. I thought that was really good. Don't Press My Buttons was really good.
That was about the elevator etiquette, right?
The Devil Wears Kodak was good.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
And I think this is the best. I think you would agree too. The Cleaning Towel of Italy.
That one is pretty brilliant on many levels. Yes. Yeah. But it takes a deep understanding to know why.
Oh, yeah. I love. Wait, what did you
Jun say? Back when our creativity was full bloom.
I don't think our creativity went anywhere. I think it was just the
mental energy and overload.
Yeah.
We stripped away anything that could compromise the sustainability of doing it. So yeah. Okay, June. I think that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. We have one more
episode
left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, thank you all for listening. That's it for this week.
Thank you so much for listening to all of our episodes. This is not the last, but still, because it's the wrap of the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows? Part of me thought this one should go out last, but maybe not.
No.
Okay. This is not as deeply sentimental and emotional as the next one. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.